a huge advocate of free and open source. It's really what got me into the kind of tech sphere. Is hey, I can't, I'm a kid, I can't afford all this expensive software, so start downloading things like Linux and Python and get running with that type of thing.
All right. So from there, why don't you tell us about kind of the IT roadmap that the Mises Caucus has? Because again, I was saying off camera that when you really get into it, I don't know that too many liberty organizations have like at least a publicly viewable IT roadmap to kind of handle to deal with the ongoing censorship and canceling and all of this kind of nonsense. And we do. It's not all something that's going to happen overnight. It's a roadmap, but it's really exciting.
Right, yeah. So as I was saying, the IT team kind of was formed in with the backdrop of a bunch of the social media censorship in early 2021. I believe it was around the January 6th and kind of post-mortem of the election cycle, which I know worried a lot of people, not just libertarians in the caucus, but a lot of people are concerned with big tech censorship. And with that being said, yeah, we formed the we formed the IT team, and we do all sorts of things. I think our guiding principle, our kind of philosophy statement is um, to take control of the technology that we use, because as we know, we're in modern days, we're surrounded by all sorts of technology, information technology, and so forth. And we're very vulnerable to control of the state through those technological control of the state by the state through those technological means. And as I had mentioned, I'm a huge advocate of free and open source. I consider myself a member of the free and open source movement. I think taking control of our software and rejecting copyright, in a sense, will allow us to be more free as individuals, and in a practical sense, allow us to do more as an organization.
So on that note, just for people who might not know, who aren't familiar with the terminology, what's the elevator pitch on what exactly is free and open source?
Yeah, so free and open source, I mean, it's a large and a diverse community, but at least how I view it is the complete rejection of intellectual property in the software space. In some sense, there are some free and open source proponents that actually use the intellectual property laws, specifically copyright laws, against itself. So if you've heard of software licenses such as GPL, made by the Free Software Foundation, people like Richard Stallman. It itself basically uses intellectual property to guarantee the open nature of software that's written under that license. It pretty much forces people using copyright law to keep their software open source if it's licensed that way. So the elevator that'd be the elevator pitch. It's a rejection of intellectual property on the in the software space, and it's also a paradigm of doing software development. So there's open software development where you work on collaboratively on software in collaborative spaces. The Linux kernel, for instance, is a famous example of this, where commits are emailed back and forth. And collaborative software development on code forges like GitHub or GitLab.
So I guess a very simple way to put it would be that like most of the software that we use on a day-to-day basis, things like Google, things like Facebook, we don't have access to their code. We don't have access to their code. We have no idea what's actually governing it. We don't know what's actually written in there, what backdoors are actually in there. We can't like get in there and grapple with it and see that stuff. And free and open source is the complete opposite, where the code for these programs, and there's many applications that are basically the free and source equivalent of many of the software that we do use from third parties on a day-to-day basis, where the code is available and you can see everything and even modify it for your own version of it. Is that a fair summary?
Yeah, I would say that. I would maybe correct a little bit in the sense that most of the public-facing software you interface with is probably proprietary or closed source, but the entire backbone or infrastructure of the internet is run by things like BSD, the BSD kernel, or Linux. So a lot of the infrastructure of the internet and the open web, as it's called, is open protocols and written by open source implementations. So it's a very powerful paradigm. But yeah, there are I think some of the most important pieces of software that have been written the past 10 or 15 years have been things like Facebook or Twitter, which
Yep.
are, of course, completely closed source, and we have no
This
idea
is
how
wrapped
they
up for you
function
too, Mike.
internally. Did I cut?
No, I'm good.
No.
All right.
So I guess the next question would be, before we get into like the meat and potatoes, what are we building up to here? Why should libertarians and anarchists be interested in free and open source? Like, why is free and open source kind of the foundational philosophy for our IT roadmap?
Yeah, because I think having been being a member of the free and open source movement and seeing how free and open source communities organize themselves, I think that's more akin to how liberty organizations should go about uh, either developing software or utilizing software. Um, so I also think that just on a more on a deontological level, that free software is ethical software, and the fact that we reject intellectual property as at least I think intellectual rejecting intellectual property is the correct libertarian view. I believe that truly espousing that in a practical sense is speaks very well to our philosophy, in the sense that there is a entire movement that's somewhat completely outside of libertarianism that adopts what I believe is a true libertarian ideal, and it does very well, right? As I mentioned, open protocols, open source software runs the backbone of the internet and a lot of the technology we interface with these days, and I think it speaks very well to the practical applications of our philosophy if something like that, comes about somewhat spontaneously, at least in relation to libertarianism.
Uh, Go ahead, Aaron.
No, I was going to say, like, I know that it seems like the last year or so it hasn't been as prevalent, but we've constantly, from when I came on board, it's been 3 or 4 years ago at this point. We've lived in constant fear that our Facebook group would get nuked, or this communication channel would get shut down, or whatever. And I think that's always going to be a problem as long as the state exists. But like, if we're able to have some sort of a little more of a guarantee, because I don't know, there are a lot of platforms that it seems like some day, one day they're just fine with whatever's going on, and then the policy changes. And even though we're kind of at an ebb on that these days, I think we always have to prepare for, as we get more successful, that we come up on more radar screens that we're less secure if we're just on a garden variety whatever platform.
Yeah, and then that's kind of the impetus behind the kind of the philosophy of using free and open sources. It's the only way you can actually own your own infrastructure and your own communication channels, and it's quite liberating. I've run all sorts of communication and social media open source protocols, and it's quite liberating. Going from proprietary land into the open source land of, like, this actually sits on the server in my house, and I own it. And I'd also, before I forget, I'd be remiss in not talking about the incredible cryptocurrency community, which
Yeah.
is by and large founded on the principles, same principles of free and open source. Is that it's an open protocol. You can read Satoshi's white paper and get the Bitcoin algorithm, and you can go implement it. And there's open source implementations, and any other credible cryptocurrency has and the cryptography itself is open, and the implementations are open source. So I also see something like the cryptocurrency community as a very strong testament to libertarian principles in kind of a different sense than the ones I just talked about with free and open source itself as a rejection of intellectual property.
All right, so let's get into the meat and potatoes. What is the plan for the Mises Caucus to kind of implement this, and what's our IT roadmap, and why should people be excited about it?
Yeah, so a large project that we have been working on and is our CRM. And due to historical reasons, we're unfortunately went with a proprietary solution. So I'll be a little embarrassed here, but I am, above all else, I am a practical person. The goal is to eventually move to open source. But yeah, a large project has been a new CRM, which doesn't sound sexy or exciting, but the bread and butter of an organization like ours. which is about getting out the word about what we do, about libertarianism, and say things like Project Decentralized Revolution, is something like a customer relations management software where you, instead of keeping all that information in somebody's mind or on a spreadsheet, you make the computers do all the hard work for you, like sending out emails, keeping track of detailed information, schedules and whatnot. Make the computers do all the hard work so that our volunteers can put in the elbow grease, the human touch, and actually get more work done. So I see it as kind of a multiplicative factor of it makes us more productive as an organization. So CRM has been a very large project. We have a lot of volunteers on the IT team that very happy with where that's going, and we just kind of launched what we call our minimum viable product for that project currently, but are moving on to secondary feature sets that will help us improve going forward. So that's a big class of projects that we're working on. Something that I'm excited about and more closer to my heart is moving our communications off proprietary platforms into open protocols such as Matrix. So those of you not familiar, Matrix is a kind of uh, up and coming communication protocol that aims to be the kind of missing human interface layer on the open web. So as you know, like the or mid aughts and throughout the 2010s were filled with every which chat platform, but vast majority of them were, or pretty much all of them were proprietary. Some of them were even built on open standards, but ended up closing their implementations. Things like WhatsApp were originally built on an open standard. That being said, yeah, Matrix is exciting because it comes with all sorts of things for free. It's decentralized in the sense that it's federated. Federated being very similar to email, where I don't care if I'm on Gmail, my own domain, or Yahoo. They all exchange email seamlessly. This is all because email is an open protocol established. I think it's been almost 50 years at this point. And updated throughout the years, although it hasn't had a major significant update I think in 25 years. So it's kind of shown its age, and that's kind of the impetus behind Matrix. Is we want a communication protocol that can service our modern tastes. So things like video chat, emojis, you name it. Operates in a modern sense. So part of this is integrating Matrix into our tech stack formally, as in we also simultaneous to this are moving our tech stack internally onto hardware that we control directly using industry standard deployment techniques. So it's also pretty close to my heart because I'm more on the DevOps sysadmin side. So that's fun things for me. I love finding new free and open source projects that solve problems for me. And the organizations I do work for. So that's exciting, and we sort of moving our infrastructure in house and putting things on it like Matrix to move our communications off proprietary platforms. I also forgot that Matrix comes with like encryption for free, so it's federated, meaning it can communicate with other servers that talk the Matrix protocol, and it includes a robust encryption protocol. It's actually based on the same protocol signal use. It's called a double ratchet algorithm.
Yeah, and I'll give you some slack because I know you said that you were a little embarrassed to go on that free and open source rant and then like, well, yeah, we're going to use the Microsoft Dynamics for the CRM. But as you said, that the long term plan is to go free and open source with the CRM. In the interim, what we're going to do is use free and open source protocols to kind of stitch onto the CRM.
Mm-hmm.
So examples of what you were talking about are like Nextcloud. Nextcloud is a free and open source version that has the same capabilities of, say, Google Drive with collaborative documents and hosting our files and all of that kind of thing. And we can stitch that functionality, the access to that functionality, right into the CRM so that eventually the CRM becomes the one-stop shop for all of the functions of our organizers, like the work desk, so to speak. So, like, what are some of these other instances?
Yeah, that's a good point. So yeah, we although we went with proprietary solution for CRM proper, everything we're building on top of that or around it is free and open source. Nextcloud being a good example of a large successful free and open source project in the groupware space. We're also planning on deploying other open source social media platforms, such as the ones based on the ActivityPub protocol, which is essentially it's really well geared towards what's called microblogging, the Twitter-like replacements. A famous implementation of that is Mastodon. Although I prefer a nicer one called Pleroma, but they speak the same protocol, so they do pretty much the same thing. And let's see what else on top of that we have. Talked about Matrix, Nextcloud. We've got remind me, Mike. It's on the tip of my tongue.
So task management.
Oh yes, that's right. Tax management is this. I mean, there's many solutions for that, but the one I personally favor is one called Vicuña. It's a cute little program that basically replicates what Todoist does with a kind of more collaborative twist on it. Then something that we are talking about stitching everything together is I think I can talk about this, Aaron. You alluded to it, is when we updating our podcast. How we do our podcasts, we are going to move to, or hopefully move to, a free and open source solution for what we're on right now, StreamYard, for broadcasting our podcasts and video streaming, such as this. Let's see. So I said Nextcloud, Pleroma, Matrix.
So to kind of paint the overall picture here, the idea is that we want to have our own servers, which we already have, and we want to have our own software solutions for all of the things that our organizers and our organization uses to function. We want to get that all under our own servers, under our own control, free and open source, so that they become uncancelable. And then by connecting these different use cases together, we can kind of create our own Zion. And then things like to use a Matrix reference, and then things like Facebook and Twitter and stuff like that become the matrix that we jump into to recruit people, like we always do, and then pull them into this kind of like underground digital world where our community exists off grid, so to speak. And when you put it that way, I think that is where it starts to get exciting.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, I think to put that in the abstract, that's exactly right. Like, this is a strategy a lot of free and open source smooth projects kind of take, is, they are on the proprietary platform, but the idea is that we need to be where the people are now and draw them in and show the advantages of, taking control of the software and technology you use day to day. One I just remember that's exciting too is Discourse, which is actually very common. You probably everybody that's on this stream has used Discourse at some point. It's a very well established classic chat forum software, or sorry, classic forum software. You've probably seen it. It's if you've dealt with a forum in the last 5 or 10 years, you've probably seen it. So I know Jeff is a really big advocate of this, like replicating the daily poll or something. Something like Discourse would fit this bill really well.
Yeah. Hey, let me jump in here for a second. So I think we're in like the Bermuda Triangle or something. First of all, I talked to Scott this last night and this afternoon, and his scheduler called me and can't get in touch with him. So I don't know. Scott is in Austin, and we're, I always put, hey, all times Eastern. So maybe it's a time zone thing, but we're his guy is trying to locate Scott, and I may remove myself from the stream here for a second to see if I can raise him too. But if Scott doesn't make it tonight, we'll hang out for a while longer because we got some more stuff to talk about. We will, we'll have him back on soon. And the other thing, like when I started the broadcast tonight, it looked like it kicked us out of the YouTube and one of the Facebook streams. So like we're on Mike's Facebook page, the Mises Caucus Facebook page, our group, Twitter, and YouTube, and one of the Facebooks and the YouTube. Like right when I started the broadcast, it like kicked us out, and I got us back in. So there's some stuff in the chat that maybe there's like the other channel is still on, but like
goddamn proprietary services.
Yeah, it's all. See, that's exactly what. I think the Southern Poverty Law Center must have sent
Stallman was right.
must have sent a memo to StreamYard or something. But it's been one of those weeks, man. Just like everything that can go wrong for me has gone wrong. So I'm glad it's Sunday and we get a new week starting tomorrow. So apologies to everyone that and Scott is like if he forgot, that's totally fine because he's Scott Horton. So and he's got who knows? He's probably drinking Dr. Pepper and smoking something or other and having a good time. So hopefully he'll be on soon. If not, we'll have him back on. But I really, we've got a lot to talk about with him that I want to talk about, including defend the guard stuff, which we'll get to whether or not we get him on tonight. But one of the things that I've been kind of teasing it both in private chats to people and occasionally on the podcast for a while. We've had a vision to kind of expand things and to not just have me be the only guy doing it. I stepped up about 3 years ago and started doing this, and I've had a good time.
Has it been that long?
It's been, so
Holy
I was
shit.
still in Ohio, and so that was 2020. I think it's almost 3 years. So maybe not quite, at least 2.5, but I've got some other things that I want to work on with the caucus, get into some more writing and stuff. And what we're going to do, we've kind of kicked around different ideas for a while, and kind of what we're going to be doing, hopefully in 3, 4, 5 weeks, is kind of have like a weekly, like a hangout show, kind of like Timcast, where we have 3 or 4, regulars, Mises Caucus people, and then usually have a guest on to talk about stuff, and to do that the same night every week. So it's kind of a destination. It'll go out live like this, and then of course it'll show up on the audio podcatchers, the next morning or later that night or whatever. So we wanted to do something where we can really, engage with what's going on in the news, rather than just have some of the stuff is topical that I've had on, but sometimes, you record something with somebody on a Monday, and by the time it posts on Friday, everything's changed. So, and we will just get more people involved. And I think it's especially going to be helpful. I've been talking to Mike, and I'm sure everybody's noticed that, with the bank stuff and the economy, that I think we're heading into something like we libertarians have been predicting for a while. We get a bad rap because we're always predicting that things are going to go south, because we know they have to at some point because of, the Austrian business cycle theory. So we know we're going to be right. We just don't know exactly when, but I think definitely something's starting. And of all the people out there who are, kind of anti-regime and even libertarian, like, not too many people really know and have it down why the economy works the way it works, and why what's going to happen is going to happen. And as we're doing stuff with Project Decentralized Revolution, we're wanting to run local candidates and do local issues coalitions and stuff like that, which you may think, well, how does that connect with Federal Reserve policy? But as things destabilize, and as people are having trouble paying for things, and God forbid, foreclosures and layoffs and stuff like that, people are going to want to know what's going on. And if we're there with more consistent content, more, both written and video, audio, we're going to be able to draw people to what we're talking about. And, with Dylan, our Twitter guy, who came on a few months ago, has greatly increased our Twitter reach. And he's pulling people in, both, influencer type people, alternative media people who are
he just posted 3 screenshots as we were talking of reposts from like Robert Barnes and Rob Schneider and Discourse TV. Like, yeah, it's
right.
It's crazy now, man.
He's killing it. And once we get, more content here pushed out that way, and bringing people over to our content, they're going to want to, we will have the explanation, the analysis of what's going on with the economy, and people are going to want to listen to us about all the other stuff, and they're going to want to get involved in their local communities as candidates or activists. So it's coming along at just the right time.
So I got word from Scott. I just texted him.
Okay.
He is going to join. So another thing that we can do is that, though, on that note, and speaking of defend the guard, we've already had proof of concept that the even lobbying at the state level can work, and we'll get into this with defend the guard. There was a very, very exciting passage of defend the guard in the Arizona Senate. There's still work to do. However, with the with how prevalent inflation is and bank failures are, and prices rising and interest rates rising and all of this stuff, there are sample legislation efforts to do like bank or gold repositories in the state banks, and essentially turn gold and silver into legal tender at the state level. And hypothetically, that could even be amended to add Bitcoin or something like that, as part of it. So good old Ron Paul and the Fed and the wars issues are just as prevalent here in 2023 as they were in 2012. Maybe that's the next effort, to try to get some more gold repositories and tackle this issue head on. And maybe we can do something more than just talk about it,
Yeah, and that's the thing, is like it's one of those things that I think sometimes we criticize kind of old regimes with the past administrations of the LP for like putting a lot of eggs in the basket of the presidential campaign, but there's something to that, because people are thinking about politics and willing to listen during a presidential campaign. That's one time. Another time is when, there's something super major happening, like we weren't up and running to this extent. I think we had just started the podcast when the COVID stuff hit. And if we'd had something like what we have now with Twitter and this other concept coming on, we could have had a bigger impact then. But when there is a crisis like COVID or like a war or like an economic crash, people who normally tune out politics, because why? Because they're normal people. Why would you want to talk about politics all day? But when people are primed to listen, that they're going to want to hear something other than what they get on PMSNBC and all that stuff. And, and we're going to have that. And again, we're not going to be 20 million viewers or listeners anytime soon, but we are going to be able to make an impact with the people who care and who do want a change and who are ready to hear about liberty. So I'm excited.
Yeah, I think we
absolutely.
have a great opportunity in the sense that, as you said, we were kind of just getting started with during beginning of COVID. But as we were like in the middle of this inflation kind of bank crisis, I see a lot of people saying, "Oh, it's the greedy banks. Oh, they weren't regulated enough. Oh, it's the greedy corporations that are driving up prices." I mean, that's just straight up economic ignorance, right? And we can be here as a solid voice, popularizing the idea of Ludwig von Mises.
Yeah. And those takes are like, there's a grain of truth to those, because there are really bad corporations and there are really bad banks, but it's not because they're too free market. It's because they're
right.
Conceptually,
right.
Conceptually, most people think, and because this is what I think they're getting at, and I think we have to kind of concede that this is true. Conceptually, when most people put money in a bank, they think, I've deposited money in a bank and that is now sitting in the bank for me to use. They don't think, I just loan the bank money to use on trades, and that is kind of fraudulent. If that's not stated up front and agreed to, of like, hey, we might be able to boost your rate, your interest rate by, making a lot of money on these risky trades. Of course, they never pass those interest rates on. Then maybe you have a risk profile and you can say, well, I got money to burn, and all of that. But this is something that like Jeff Deist and Bob Murphy on the Human Action podcast have been talking a lot about, is perhaps the demand for like full reserve banks and how that would work. And Caitlin Long and her bank out in Wyoming, how they do that. They have like $1.08 on hand for every dollar deposited or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, the point being that it's not the answer isn't simply just the greedy banks. You got to think about the system that's behind it, the Federal Reserve System, right? That incentivizes or even enables the type of behavior of I give the money to my bank. They don't actually keep it in the vault. They go out and gamble it, right? That's only possible because of the system like the Federal Reserve.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So while we're waiting for Scott, because like I said, he did text me and say that he's going to be on there. Just to review what Aaron was saying about our podcast. We're trying to up our game, like our quantity and our quality with the podcast. Right now we kind of sporadically have what we call standard format, like one-on-one interview, and we want to move to something where we eventually have 3 pieces of content coming out every week. One would still be that kind of standard format, doing one-on-one interview with an author or an expert or somebody who wrote an article on, deep diving into a topic. And then we want to add to that a roundtable format where we are kind of more relaxed, having fun, going over the news from the week and all of that sort of thing with a guest. And then eventually I also would like to start doing a podcast every week, kind of doing something more in the cultural realm. I had a phone call with somebody the other day who kind of remembered that I used to do this. I used to do an interview and or a podcast, and I would interview like vocalists from metal bands and stuff like that. And I really kind of want to get back to my roots doing that. I've begged Eric July to do this for years. But no such luck. He would be perfect for it.
Yeah. And I've wanted somebody, to have Mike do a show or somebody else, because all the musicians that I like are dead, and I don't know about metal and all this. Like, this is not my thing. And to have somebody like Mike who, I told Mike the other day, so like it or not, you're kind of the face of this thing. And he's been, he's much more about the ideas and the work. And he doesn't like, he's not, shy about going out there, but he's not like a self-promoter in a way that a lot of people are. But, I think that his viewpoint, he's actually got a lot to say on a lot of things other than just, what we're doing at the Mises Caucus. I see he's got the Carl Jung book. I've got the same edition of that book back there. What's the Modern Man in Search of a Soul, right? Is that the one?
It's a great book. Yeah.
And we've talked about a lot of things that, this would be a good show. Like, one of these days we will do at least one. And if we do it, it'll be 5 hours long, a Sopranos podcast. Me and Mike.
Hell yeah. See, that would be awesome though. That would be awesome. We could flesh out my whole, like, this thing that we're doing in this underground libertarian political world is kind of like it's like the mafia. We don't kill anybody, but it's like the light version of the mafia. And when you really start to get into it, it is.
Well, sometimes we do say, "Hey, is he a friend of ours or a friend of mine?" And we use terminology like that sometimes. So.
I do, and I love it because you're like one of a very few people who gets it. Because I'll routinely be like talking about the libertarian world, like this thing of ours, and nobody's like, what?
Yeah. Well, we can bring on my good friend Scott Horton. Scott, how you doing?
I'm okay. Sorry, guys, I'm late. I ate a cheeseburger. I'm pretty sure my wife laced it with some kind of sleeping potion or something, and it knocked me the hell out. And then
that's all right. I'm glad you showed up, because in honor of our show tonight, I made proper Texas chili, which of course actual chili has no beans, and so I made good Texas chili, and I used the Scott Horton Tennessee hot sauce. I met the guy over in Clarksville a couple of weeks ago and got that. It's got Dr. Pepper in it, which, just like Scott's always got Dr. Pepper in him, among other things. And it's really good hot sauce. So I had a bowl of that, and I get to plug the Hotter Than the Sun book and the Tennessee hot sauce guy. So Scott, how you doing, man? It's good to see you.
I'm doing great. I was a little embarrassed. I gave away some of that stuff at a Libertarian Party fundraiser. And I was telling all the guys, man, this stuff is so hot, it's going to kick your ass. And then they all tasted it and they were like, man, that's really yummy. And I was like, what? And then, so I went home and I tested the test batch that he sent me. And that stuff will kill you. Then I went and I tested the stuff with the label on it, and it's not the same as the test batch.
It's
all. So
it's pretty hot.
was made to look quite foolish because the stuff that I gave the thumbs up to for the actual recipe was enough to make your forehead sweat just from looking at it. But
I'm just wondering
anyway.
where bean-ridden chili hails from, because that's where I want to move.
Well, well, like proper Texas chili has no beans, right? And we'll do an episode of your podcast on this, but chili with beans is garbage. It's just soup. If you want chili, it's got to be Texas chili. But anyway,
Those are fine words.
Yeah, well, you're a Yankee, so whatever.
Well, I'm from Arizona.
So
that's
there's
where
a
I
lot
get my
of
chili
stuff.
from.
We wanted to talk to Scott about several things, but we've had Liam McCollum who is going to be. You're going to see him on the podcast feed more. He's been working up in Montana on Defend the Guard, and he wanted me to ask you about what's going on with that. We mentioned it just a little bit ago, but I know you're jazzed about that, Scott. So and you're more on top of it than anybody. So, and I'm going to send an email out tomorrow of calls to action. And I know about the thing in Arizona, but what else is going on? Because I think there's a couple other things popping off about it.
Yeah. So, I mean, we're recording this. I don't know. We're live tonight here.
Yeah, we are live.
Okay, great. Yeah. So tomorrow, Monday, we have a huge phone banking project going on. We've got Arizona, we've got Texas, and I forget the third one. If Diego was here, he knows the answer. Diego Rivera from Defend the Guard and BringOurTroopsHome.us. He's really the boss of all this stuff. But we've got the Speaker of the House, I guess, in Arizona. It needs the pressure. He is trying to kill it himself after it passed the full Senate, not just a committee, passed the full Senate in Arizona with every single Republican voter supporting it there, and all the Democrats opposed, if you can believe that. I guess you can. But then there's this Republican that controls the House who's trying to stop it. So it's all pressure on him to at least let the thing be debated and come to the floor. And then also we have a really good guy on the committee here in Texas, but the chair of the committee is trying to prevent the bill from even being heard. And so we're going to do a full phone banking campaign for him. Now, here's the thing about that. In fact, maybe I'm not the right person to talk about this because I spent the second half of last year beseeching everyone to try so hard to pressure their congressman on the Yemen War Powers resolution, which, look, man, I never promised it was magic or that democracy's great or our champion Bernie Sanders is going to definitely come through for us or whatever. The whole point was that we have to try. We have an active war powers resolution. We have an absolutely genocidal war, and we have an opportunity to try to pressure the Congress to pass the bill to pressure the president and the Saudis to wrap the thing up. Now, that didn't happen. But then again, the grassroots pressure that was brought to bear and the reaction from the Senate. In fact, I mean, it would have been a lot better if they'd had the big debate and everything, if Sanders hadn't shut it down. Biden came in and took our votes is what happened. We had the votes until Biden came and sabotaged it at the end. But still, that pressure is part of the pressure on Saudi Arabia that has led them to the negotiating table, to actually talking directly with the Houthis on a ceasefire now. Now, there are a lot of other pressures involved, but the American people pressuring the Congress and the Congress making it known to the Saudis that they're very unhappy with the current situation and all that was a part of that. But I understand how people might have felt like, oh, man, we got cheated for the amount of effort that we put into that to be kind of let down by Sanders at the end where he didn't even host the debate. He just shut the thing down as soon as Biden told him to, kind of thing. That kind of sucked. But this is a whole different animal anyway. But I mean, the good news on Yemen is they really are negotiating peace now. And I think we can take a tiny amount of credit for that at least. But the real point is that we're talking about state legislatures here. And it's just totally different. And it doesn't mean that democracy is magic and it's guaranteed to work and this kind of thing on the state level any more than on the national level. But it means that we have, at least a much better chance of making them listen and making them think that, boy, they better do this. Now, obviously, they've got the Pentagon, on the other hand, telling them you better not do this. We're going to take your money away. We're going to, close down your bases, which they have no authority to do. It's not really true. But that's their threat. On the other side, they've got the phone ringing off the hook. And as we saw with the Arizona State Senate, it worked. It was the phone calls, man. It wasn't any other thing. You know, they had.
Let me
Go
put
ahead.
one bit of meat on that bone. You know, I made calls too, and we engaged in that effort. And what we were told from Diego over at Bring Our Troops Home is that there was something like 1,400 calls made total before lunch. And I can attest that, you know, I had one. I kind of felt bad for going hard because it sounded like a really sweet old lady who supported the bill or something, and she remarked, like, she was like, I'm very, very impressed. Like, we've gotten about 300 calls to this office today about this bill. Like, people are really passionate about it. And, you know, it left an impression. And you're right. Like, the reaction, Diego also told me, I think it was related to the Arizona one. I might screw up a detail or two here, but that some of these congressmen were being taken out on plane rides by like generals and told, like, man, this plane, you know, this helicopter is really great, right? Like, oh, look how nice this helicopter is. Yeah, you're going to lose it if you support this bill, you know. And
were they dangling the guys outside the window too, or is that
That's
if that
funny.
didn't work?
yeah, no, it wasn't like Tony's partner from Scarface, but basically just trying to, like, show them what threaten them with what they will take away from them, which is, like Scott said, they don't have the authority to do that. It's not going to happen. But they actually feel the need to take politicians on helicopter rides in order to scaremonger this thing into not passing.
Right. And which, you know, in the case of the Senate, it didn't work. And I mean, one of the quotes from one of the staffers there, they had her on tape saying, my goodness, you know, we sure would be crazy to oppose this bill now with all the phone calls that we've gotten today. And the caller says, that's great. You know, it was all over the talk radio there. And she's like, boy, we'd be crazy to come out against this bill now. And that's, look, they could be crazy and they could be pressured, and incentives matter. And obviously the state has a lot to bring to bear. But, you know, what's magic about this Defend the Guard bill is that it's combat veterans and right-leaning ones, libertarians and Ron Paul Republicans, who are leading this fight. And they're combat veterans of the 21st century terror wars, right? These are not long-haired old hippies from Vietnam, which, if I say veterans for peace, that's what you think of, right? Is more like left-wingers from a previous era, something like that. And it's just not the case here with these guys. And then, so, you know, when a left wing or a liberal brings up the Constitution and invokes it, it's kind of hollow. Like, okay, you know, maybe they'll stand for free speech in some issues, although that's an outdated concept in 2021 for liberals. But when, you know, right-leaning combat vets invoke the Constitution and talk about how, yeah, that was the oath that their buddy took, their buddy that they left in the desert dirt over there back in the war, then, and I've seen it happen, you know, the looks on the faces and the attention and the body language and everything of these Congress people is that they go from, you know, ho-hum, another hearing about another piece of paper and whether we're going to stamp it or not, and what are we doing? And now all of a sudden they're hearing really serious war stories. You know, one of these guys, Darren, talks about how one of his jobs was burying thousands of these guys at Arlington Cemetery when they come home. And, you know, this kind of thing. So all of a sudden the topic becomes very real. It's not just a matter of, you know, having a base and some money and this and that. We are hearing about guys, you know, guts in their hands as they die kind of crap from these guys. So it makes it very serious. And then invoking the Constitution, invoking, you know, their military experience and their devotion to the Constitution, and how the Congress blatantly, the empire itself, has been in defiance of the Constitution outright. And everybody knows it. I mean, everybody understands. There ain't nobody in America who thinks that the Constitution doesn't delegate the war power to the Congress to decide. The president is in charge of the war. The Congress decides if we have one or not. Everybody knows that. And it's, you know, the basis of all of the arguments for ratifying the Constitution in the first place for any student of the Federalist Papers, or any of those arguments at the time of the ratification, or the statements and the letters of all of the major founders, Thomas Jefferson and John Adams and Alexander Hamilton and James Madison and Thomas Jefferson, and all those guys are absolutely unanimous about all this stuff. There was no disagreement at the time about it either. And so when we talk about how, you know, a lot of times they don't know the last time that Congress declared war was against Romania and Bulgaria in 1945. Pardon me, in 1941. No, 42. Sorry, spring of 42 in World War II. And that they just delegate this power to the president to decide, and then hide behind that. Oh, I just delegated the power to the president to decide. John Kerry, I didn't want to pick on the Democrats too explicitly in my main speech last week, but, because I didn't know if I was going to like step on toes with that. So I just was more generic about it. But especially the Democrats, John Kerry and Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden, President Joe Biden, have all hid behind the fact that, no, we just authorized W. Bush to decide. It wasn't us. And Joe Biden to this day lies and says, oh, well, I was just trying to bolster Bush's ability to negotiate by giving them the authorization. I never meant for him to use. And now we know that's a lie. Anybody who remembers 2002 remembers Joe Biden's role in this. But they all hide behind that and refuse to take responsibility for that. So, anyway, so all we do is we bring in all these soldiers, and all they're saying is, they took responsibility for their oath to the Constitution. The Congress is in absolute defiance of it. And so now they insist that the Constitution be enforced. And here's the way to do it. You get the states to protect their own guard troops that, after all, belong to the states, and whose job, after all, is protecting the people of the states. And when you sign up for the National Guard, they say it's, 2 weeks a year, 1 weekend a month. And you're going to sandbag rivers in a flood, or you're going to help evacuate people in an earthquake, or help put out a forest fire, or, God forbid, if the cop murders somebody on camera and starts a riot and you have to, protect the city from being burned down or whatever. And there's so many examples from recent history where the state governments really needed their guard troops and they were gone. Most famously, not just Louisiana, but all the neighboring guard units were gone in Iraq during Hurricane Katrina. And then we've had in the Oregon and California forest fires out west and all these things. Yeah, well, where's our guard units? Oh, they're in Afghanistan. Oops. Oh, they're over in Iraq. Oops. Or they're in Djibouti, like they are right now, helping kill Somalis. Or they're in, Poland or Romania helping train Ukrainians or some kind of thing. So it just totally makes sense. The empire's wrong, and everybody knows it. Here are guys who've been to the wars and back who are saying so. For 20 years, they told me, I have to shut up. You shut up. You don't get to talk about this unless you've been in the military and you know about the war and this and that. All right. Well, now here's Dan McKnight and Diego Rivera are saying, all right, well, listen up to me then. And seems like, the war party owes it, or the people at least who went along with all that. They owe these guys a chance to make themselves heard. And then once they make themselves heard, it's pretty irresistible. They got a lot of great guys on their team too. They got this guy, Brian Sharp, comes in. He was a colonel or lieutenant colonel, went to West Point. And I don't know what happened to Jeff Lyons, but he's a great one. I think he's still involved. And a lot of great vets who are part of this thing who come and testify before the state legislatures on this. Anyway, so we've gotten it through a few committees lately. We got it through the full state Senate in Arizona, and we got a full call to action tomorrow, phone banking tomorrow. So if people go to defendtheguard.us/phone bank, that's all you got to do is go to defendtheguard.us/phone bank, and you can sign up, and Diego will take you through the steps. Here's what to say, how to say it, get you all prepared, get your list of numbers to call. Wait 15 minutes, call them again. And we're going to do that tomorrow. We're going to do everything we can to get this into the House committee and
I wanted to
House in Texas and onto the House floor in Arizona. Sorry.
We're gonna be blasting out an email with all of this tomorrow, so Aaron can add that website, that URL to that email, and we're gonna keep on supporting this. I think Aaron, you had something to say?
Yeah, the technical difficulties continue on my end. The audio of you guys keeps cutting out, but apparently it's fine for everyone else. So must be my computer. But I was explaining to my blessedly non-political wife over our Texas chili, even though we're in Tennessee earlier, about what the Defend the Guard is. And those of us, a lot of us have been on this for so long that I think we forgot to mention exactly what it does and why. To me, it's like a genius thing that it's a decentralized local way to fight the foreign wars. So explain just how that works and how genius it is.
Yeah, it's, I guess I didn't say. The law says the president cannot nationalize the National Guard troops of any of the states with this law unless they have an official declaration of war from the Congress, which we know they won't do. And so as long as they're not going to obey the Constitution, then the state governors and state legislatures are not going to obey the president's order to give up their guard troops. And I mean, frankly, they just completely abuse the National Guard and use them as an extra set of reserves. And if you listen to them talk, they go, yeah, but what if we have to fight a two-front war? Yeah, what if we have to somehow fill up 800 bases in the world? What if we have a world empire? We need those National Guard units. But what if we don't have a world empire? We don't need those National Guard units deployed like this whatsoever. And that's the whole thing of it, is these guys are constantly begging the question about how necessary all this is. You know, there was testimony, I think I have this in the last book, where one of these generals tells the Congress in the appropriation hearings that, listen, guys, I mean, if you want me to defend the United States of America, I can do that for like $100 billion. But if you want me to be able to go anywhere in the world at a moment's notice and intervene on whichever side you guys change your mind to right away, then we're going to need this bigger budget. You know, he wasn't trying to be like moralistic about it or whatever. He was just saying, look, defending the middle part of North America is easy, but you guys have this, you know, kill chain spread throughout the planet Earth. I can kill a guy by looking at him in Nepal right now, but it ain't free, you know? So that's what it is. And it's the same thing with the National Guard units. They say, you know, oh no, this is going to undermine our missions around the world. There's missions we don't belong in the first place. And by the way, to be specific here, the law is very specific, and it doesn't prevent the Guard troops from being transferred overseas for training missions or anything like that. It's just for participation in hot wars. So, look, it's meant to protect the Guard, to defend the Guard from the depredations of our presidents and their foreign policies. That's the primary mission of the thing. But it does that by essentially refusing them for use for imperial ends. You know, look, it's the same thing with conscription or anything else, right? If this country was really attacked and was like being invaded and needed defending, does anybody think that we would need conscription to come up with enough armed men to fight? You know, never mind just, you know, militias on the beaches, regular guys with rifles protecting the shores. But even if it came to like, you know, building up a massive land army, if it was really a defensive war to protect our lives and our Constitution, our Bill of Rights, as Smedley Butler said, then that wouldn't be a problem at all. Every National Guard unit would be racing to the front, and with all us kooks in our pickup trucks behind them, right? There's no question about that.
So Scott,
that's what we're up against here, you know?
We're coming up towards the end of our time. So I just had one question for you before we got to the tour. A comment that I made earlier was about how, you know, given the Defend the Guard Act, given you know, the war in Ukraine, given the bank failures, given the inflation, all of this stuff, you know, good old and the Fed and the war issues are from Ron Paul's day are super relevant again today. And my hope is that with this passage in the Senate, and, you know, we'll see what happens in the House, we'll see what happens in Texas, we'll see what happens in New Hampshire and Montana with further Defend the Guard actions. But for me, just the fact that all those calls were made and, you know, it did pass the Senate ought to serve as a white pill for libertarians, because, you know, I fundamentally believe that many libertarians don't actually believe that we can do anything about the situation we find ourselves in. And this should serve to break that mold. Like, yes, we tried it with the War Powers Resolution thing. That's federal. That didn't happen. But you know what? We were talking 7 senators that were on the swing that were calculated. And, you know, what is trying to get the vote of, you know, a few million people or 20 million, 40 million people for a presidential vote compared to trying to call and, you know, essentially bully 7 state senators. That's a completely different task. You know,
Right.
like the realm, how realistic that is just totally different. And something that we can actually shift the Overton window on. So
Yeah.
what I'm
Hey, wait,
hoping is,
let me say about that, Michael, that look, I think this is true for the new LP. And,
Yes.
you know, by the way, I don't know if you guys saw this, this is unbelievable, but one of the old leaders of the LP was over in Ukraine shilling for this stuff. So, I mean, thank
His
God.
last name is
All right,
Henchman, for Christ's sakes.
the Mises Caucus takeover. Can you imagine if that was the National Libertarian Party right now was in on this, you know, trans rights for Taiwan and let's go support the regime in Kiev? You've got to be kidding me, man. Yeah, well, they don't speak for us. They speak for themselves only now because of Heise, because of the takeover, thank God. But then
He said he was there for tax and corruption reform in Ukraine.
Yeah,
Like,
he's got a lot of
banning
work
religions
to do.
and conscripting like 16-year-olds. Like, well, what about the tax code?
Look, this happened in Iraq 20 years ago too. You know, Tom Palmer went over there. Yeah, let's help the Iraqis write a free market constitution and all this. Like, man, the Ayatollah is going to write the constitution for Iraq, dude. Shut the hell up. You don't know Tom Palmer. He's CIA anyway. If anyone knows him, don't trust that guy. He's your enemy. But anyway, I mean, these LP, I mean, he's Atlas Society and all that State Department goon, but just people believing in this, getting caught up in this and thinking that this is a free market and libertarian way to go. You didn't notice your first ally in the project is the American world empire. And just because you're from here and believe in freedom and the US government says that word sometimes doesn't mean that this is what the project is. It's just completely incredible. But anyway, that's besides the point. The point is that those people don't control the Libertarian Party at all. In fact, they're not even welcome in it at all. They're all Democrats now. And the Libertarian Party is right now the biggest anti-war group in America. And we're also the biggest anti-gun control group. And we're also the biggest free Ross Ulbricht group. And we're also the biggest, you know, stop the red flag law from being passed in the next state that's trying to pass it. I said guns already, didn't I? There's more. But anyway, the point is that
gold and silver repositories might be one that we really need to really add.
Yes, state governments should be minting silver currency, gold currency, anything like that. That's, you know, our libertarian best issues. The LP in the off season, when we're not just running candidates, we can do things like this, where we can, you know, with the snap of our fingers, say, all right, look, email list. Today we have a huge project, phone banking for Defend the Guard. You know, let's do these guys, you know, let's do right by them, these Defend the Guard troops. Let's do everything we can to help them and, you know, score these victories where we have them, get them through committees and through houses and through senates, wherever we can, push the thing forward as best we can and take those victories too. And this is how we build up our reputation too, you know, as a side effect. This is how we show people that this is what the Libertarian Party is about now, just like with our great anti-war protests that we had in Washington, D.C. there, which is something that the old Libertarian Party would have never even thought of to try. That the Libertarians, you know, the new Libertarian Party under Angela McArdle absolutely knocked it out of the park with that awesome rally with, you know, Ron Paul and Tulsi Gabbard and everybody else came.
That's
so
a great
thing here. And honestly, man, like, I talked about this before, you know, in my speech last July. I talked about, I know a guy, this is libertarian community stuff, right? There's this guy, you guys know the app, the Float app, right? Mm-hmm. Which is, you know, like a social media app for libertarians. So it's a husband and wife who run it, Aaron and Kingsley. Okay. Kingsley's father is doing 60 years for a bag of cocaine.
I never knew that about him. I've met him.
Now, check this out. My man is 30. His dad has already done 30 years. His dad has been locked up his entire life over as much cocaine as the president's son smokes in a night. And the guy's sitting in the penitentiary in Florida right now. So if we can pass this thing through the Arizona House, the Defend the Guard legislation, then why can't we, the Libertarian Party of the United States of America and our, you know, 30,000 people on our email lists and whatever we got, why can't we be the get Kingsley's dad out of prison party for a month? And why can't we do everything we can to pressure the parole board, the governor, the talk radio and the newspapers in town and whoever we got to, and just bum rush Florida until this guy is free? It ain't right. Ooh. And he's one of our guys. So what are we doing? Right. And then if we do that, then we move on to the next one. We got 30,000 people. And look, I know it's hard to herd cats, but these are cats who all signed up to join a political party to take political action. And we can all sit around and quote Lysander Spooner about how government sucks, which he's right. And we should do that. But these are people who signed up to participate in political activity.
So there's a lot more than 30. I mean, if you're counting email lists, I mean, between the Mises Caucus email list, if we're working in tandem with, like, you know, if the Libertarian Institute is email bombing, if the party is email bombing, if we can get influencers to do that, and stuff like that, that's a lot. But you actually just set a light bulb off in my mind that I've, like, in the back of my mind, I've been trying to figure out for a while. I don't know why I didn't think of this, because it's so simple, but I've always wondered, how can we more formally work with the 10th Amendment Center? And that's it, monthly, because Bolden looks at all the bills, right? So, like, just a report of, like, this is what's coming up in the House. We have a monthly call to action, you know, boom, and call bomb that shit. So that might be something to write down.
I just wrote it down.
Yeah.
That's great. And look, I think there's so much potential here, guys. There's so much potential for the good we can do, mostly for the evil that we can thwart. Right? Like trying to stop them from doing the very worst things that they're doing, undermining support for the very worst stuff that they're doing, and trying, you know, isolating certain, you know, friends of ours, as you guys were talking about when I came on here, like Kingsley's dad, or like free Ross Ulbricht from jail for the Silk Road. I mean, if anybody knows that story, I'm not the world's greatest expert on it, but I've interviewed a couple, and, you know, I know that essentially this guy got life in prison for making a website where you can buy drugs with Bitcoin, right? There, all the stuff about hitmen and everything, all that was lies. And people say the guy was, you know, contracted out of murder and whatever. It's total BS. It's, you know, they actually, I think they, you know, sentenced him for, you know, they call it, I'm sorry, I forgot the term for this, but a sentence for quitted behavior or something like that. Like, you could be sentenced for behavior that you were not convicted of, or even that you were explicitly acquitted of. They can still sentence you for it anyway, essentially, by bringing it up at your sentencing, and the courts have all allowed this now. So the guy is doing life, even though the charges he was actually convicted of would have gotten him a much lighter sentence than that. And he's a libertarian. He's one of us. It's a complete and total injustice. And we got tens of thousands of people. And so if somebody has a real plan, which I don't, but like somebody has a real action plan for, like, here's what we're going to do. Here's who we're going to bum rush with calls. Here's who we're going to inundate with letters. Here's how we're going to approach this, and have a real plan. And then, you know, the leaders of the party and the caucuses and whatever can herd these cats and get everybody interested in doing the same thing at the same time. Maybe we can get our guy out of jail, you know, and then again, have another feather in our cap to show that this thing can work. We can really thwart the war party, thwart the state and its worst depredations if we work together and try hard, man.
Yeah.
So that's a great segue, because you had mentioned, you know, a lot about the New Libertarian Party, and we're coming towards the end of the stream here, but you know, one way that you could find out what the New Libertarian Party is all about is by coming to the Take Human Action tour events that we have coming up. Our first one is going to be here in 6 days on April 1st in New York City, and that's going to be featuring Scott. You won't be at that one, but one of your proteges, Keith Knight, will be at that one to kind of wrap on the foreign policy stuff.
Y'all will love Keith, man. He's so great.
I can't wait for people to see how into it is, man. That dude has got the right attitude and the right spirit. And yeah, he's gonna blow people away, as will, you know, Gene Epstein and Mike Meharry and you're in a few others, but Dave Smith, Maj Toure, Tom Woods, Gene Epstein. You know, this is a stacked event, and the guys in New York, you have a very special. You're getting a killer deal here, because this is the only one that's not in a hotel, so we can bring our own booze. And we have sponsors that are a brewery and a winery. So there's going to be, you know, free beer flowing, free drinks, and some of the biggest heroes of the Liberty movement. So come on out. And then there's also, at every single one of these tour stops, free campaign training for those interested in Project Decentralized Revolution and running local, and, you know, doing this kind of nullification stuff that we're talking about on the state level at the local level. which can set the tone for and set precedent for the state level later on. So, we got we got New York on April 1st. We got Chicago on April 15th. We've got Nashville, Tennessee on the 22nd. Texas, Austin, Texas on the 29th. And then Scott, you'll be at that one in Austin, Texas. You'll be at the one in Oakland, California on May 13th. And then May 22nd, you'll also be at the one in Denver. That also is going to be a super killer one. That's you, that's Maj, that's Ryan McMacken, that's Tom. Great lineup, and huge investment from us into our community. We're losing money on these events because we wanted to do something to bring the community together and keep the engagement up, and give people the education and the entertainment, but also the opportunity to train and take the action seriously.
Absolutely. And by the way, the 29th, is that this month or that's next month you're talking about?
It's next month. April 29th. Yeah.
You were freaking out.
You'll be on time for that one, hopefully.
Actually, no, that's okay.
Push up to that, Scott.
On the 30th. I actually, Julian Assange's father and brother are coming to town, and I'm going to get to do the Q&A session with them after they debut their movie here.
That's great.
Nice. No Utah events, Jordan. Not this time. We want to be doing more of these events in the future, but I think we wanted to do one final thing here, Aaron, where we kind of talk about, what all we've got going on, looking forward for the caucus. We talked about the IT team and kind of the free and open source vision for the technology. But, that's just one aspect. People, I think, don't realize how much stuff is going on here at the Mises Caucus. There's the events, there's the 250 state organizers, organizing around the country. We're still taking over states. We just repelled a clapback at us in New Jersey. We took over Mississippi. We took over Tennessee. We just took over Alabama. So we're still growing and we're still going. And, that's just one layer. There's the candidate team, runitlislibertarian.com. Amy Lepore, I was hoping she could be here tonight. She's doing 2 trainings a month with candidates, and we have recruited over 300 or about 300 candidates and campaign managers for 2023 and 2024. And that's a variety of training from elected libertarians to the 10th Amendment Center to the Grassroots Leadership Academy to the Leadership Institute. Carla Mora is getting ready to do training with us. Brian Nichols, who just wrote a book on how to run for local office, he's going to be doing training with us. So twice a month plus 6 in-person opportunities, that's a whole effort, reviewing these candidates, interviewing these candidates. There's a lot under the iceberg here of what we do. Yeah. IT team, candidate team, Aaron, you run our comms through the email. We have the podcast effort here. We're talking about how we talked about earlier about how we want to expand the podcast and, expanding the podcast is, actually, before I get into that, I want to give a special announcement to everybody because I know that there's some fatigue on this one. I was waiting to put this out as an email, but I promise you guys that we are going to take a break on fundraising. I know we've blown your fucking head off with all of the fundraising emails, and that there's some fatigue there, but we are going to take April off from fundraising. We've gone really hard on it for the tour. This tour, as the organizer of the tour, has been murder. Yep. It has been so stressful. It has been so much work to put this thing together. And, we needed to go move on all fronts on fundraising. And, it's cost something like $120,000 or $125,000, which is not a normal thing to achieve within Libertarian Party circles. So we still have some lingering funds and to raise, lingering costs to cover. But, that's why we did it. And the rest of the year, we're going to be focusing on Project Decentralized Revolution. We're going to be focusing on, after the tour, me personally, I'm going to be welcoming my firstborn into the world. And then I'm going to be going state by state, leadership team by leadership team, and pitching them on the Project Decentralized Revolution political strategy, and try to get 30 plus states at least to buy into this so that a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, that strategy is the norm, just the way right now the norm is, well, I don't know, just run for something, run for anything, that's the norm right now. So we have to change that. We have to break that mold. We have to change that culture into being something a little bit more directed, a little bit more viable. So that's what we're going to be doing. And then the next big thing that we're going to be working on after that, as we start to gear up for the presidential cycle, is we're going to be doing some, I don't know if I want to commit to everything, but we're going to be doing some major restructuring of the organization. And going to a model here where we're not just strictly asking for donations from you guys, but also providing value and creating opportunities to have value for value. So right now the only entity that we have is the PAC, and we're in talks to at some point create a corporation for the Mises Caucus so that we can do advertising deals. I've made a lot of friends with a lot of libertarian owned businesses over the course of this tour organizing period, and for guns, ammo, CBD, kratom, lawyers, underwear, you name it, body armor, suppressors, insurance salesmen, all kinds of stuff that people need. And I think we have a real opportunity here, while upping our game on our podcast, to create win-win-win scenarios for us as an organization, for these businesses that are libertarian owned, and you guys as consumers. And we can kind of change up the model of how we make money to not just ask for money, but earn your money through the value that we support, creating membership programs, giving you perks, giving you discounts, giving you exclusive access, all of this kind of stuff. So this is going to be, go ahead.
And then all that, so we can fund the PAC, right? That's the major thing, is to keep the thing going and to be able to do more of the type of things that Mike was just talking about for the end of still accomplishing the things that we want to accomplish.
Oh yeah, no. None of our activities are going anywhere. But we've had to do some deep dive on the rules and how to utilize loopholes. How might a corporation and a PAC exist, next to each other. We're still going to have to ask for money for candidate support. That's politics. That's always going to have to be the case. But we can kind of open up these other avenues.
Well, and that's why, to go back a little bit to what Scott was saying earlier about, calling the phone banking stuff and what we can accomplish with, I think we've got 20 some thousand people on our active email list just with the caucus. And what we can do by calling and emailing and stuff like that, it's very true. So I used to be a newspaper reporter at like a suburban chain of papers in Ohio. And in that, I covered a lot of, school board meetings, city council meetings, things like that, which I hate those. They're the most boring things ever. But the people who show up to those school board meetings on a Tuesday night at 7:30 for 3 hours, those are the people who are getting things. Those are why our cities and our schools and stuff like that are the way they are, is because people show up. A very small amount of people show up on the council and in the meetings to provide comments. And so those of us, that's why we're, the local candidate thing is to get people who, like me, I can't do that. I just can't, that's not my thing. But somebody who likes to do that and who's willing to do that, to get a libertarian in there, and somebody who's well-spoken with ties in the community, who has a plan, who knows their neighbors, those type of people can actually have an effect on things. And, Michael Malice talks a lot about it. I think Tom talks about it, that, Twitter has exposed the fact that a lot of these people who are in charge of things, whether it's, the president or these, the media guys on all the big networks, right down to your, a mayor like Lori Lightfoot or somebody like that, like we all see, and Americans are seeing more and more how deeply unimpressive some of these people are. And if they can do it and show up and get their way, what can we do if we organize and we have, the great political philosophy that we have, and we have, truth and reason as far as economics and things like that going for us. That's why we're trying this local strategy. That's what Project Decentralized Revolution is all about, is not trying to play the respectability politics thing and to try to, roll the dice and, I don't know, somehow win the presidency. I don't know how that would work, but this is something that hasn't been tried, and it's something that can work. It's not a quick fix. There are no shortcuts, but it's something that we can do and get some little victories like Scott was talking about earlier.
And we don't talk about it enough, but we've already had some of these victories. Bill Schultz, one of our guys in Kentucky, he got endorsed by Thomas Massey and then won city council. Aaron Lamb beat a long-term incumbent in as a mayor in Keensburg, Colorado, and has got things going right now. I mean, some of this stuff might feel small, but I think he did something to free up like regulations on chickens and made it much more easy for people to own and raise chickens. Kelly Cardin, his county commissioner out in California. We just, I feel bad, I forget the name, but there was just a guy who won for like a police accountability board in Illinois. We've already got these wins, and we haven't even kicked into like gotten our recruits from our trainings out and deployed and all of that. So, we don't talk about the wins enough, but they are out there. And, I really like this idea of like the monthly call to action with the 10th Amendment Center. So that's something we can do. There's a lot of white pills when you look for them. It's easy to turn on your social media and see how people treat each other on Twitter, and then see the rate hikes and know what that's going to do to your prices and go, oh God, just end it now. But if you look for it, there's a lot of good going on, and that good is worth fighting for, and that's what we're here to do.
Yeah.
Cool. Hey, what's up with Brody?
Oh, Brody's our IT guy, and he was our time filler since our main guest was late. But Brody is one of the...
I had to play Prelude to you, Scott, unfortunately.
Thanks for filling in, man. That was a hell of a cheeseburger, I swear. It kicked my head.
I told Brody when I met it for the first time in person in Reno, and if you guys watch Breaking Bad, Gale, the guy who's like the chemist and all that, with Walt, he reminds me of Gale. He's like super smart and just this really sweet guy who like knows everything. And so he kind of looks like
has
Gale
a Ron
too,
Paul
so.
sticker in his meth book.
And that's right. He's one of our resident geniuses. And was just talking a lot about how we can do alternatives to Discord and Drip and all the stuff that we use to communicate that might get nuked by the state at some point. So and Chase is working on that, and we got Paul Bracco, my man. We got a lot of guys working, and a bunch of guys I don't even know that Brody's got down in his basement. So yeah.
Cool. Awesome, guys. All right. Well, if you like what you've heard, go to takehumanaction.com, sign up, and then make sure you definitely go to takehumanaction.tour.com and go to the tour event nearest you. There's just nothing like this happening, or that has been happening in the Libertarian Party, where we're deploying events like this. The party's doing anti-war rallies. We're implementing free and open source software to kind of become uncancelable and away from the tech oligarchs that have the rotating doors with the state. We've got the political strategy. We're investing in our community. We're investing in our culture. There's so much going on, and you could be a part of it with us. And we want you here with us. So come have fun. If you're in New York, have free beer at the Take Human Action tour and get involved.
And that's another thing. I had a couple of questions by email in response to some of the tour emails that if you want a chance to hang out with Scott for a few minutes and all the other people on the bill at every particular tour stop, it's not like they're going to be off in a green room and sequestered and they rush in and then rush out at like a book signing or something. There's time to actually shake hands, get books signed, hang out, and all that. And that's, building that liberty culture and is what we're trying to do. And like Scott, I've worked with him on some other projects, and Scott is exactly the same person on the phone or in person than he is when you hear him on his podcast or Dave's or on here. So, and all the other guys I've met in regard to Mike Rechtenwald is a great guy, Maj. So they want to talk to you guys too. So you want to buy the ticket and come on out and say hi to people. I'm going to be hosting the one in Nashville. So please come out, go there, takehumanaction.tour.com, get your tickets. And it's going to be fun. Mike's put a whole lot of work into this, and so if you've been on the fence about it, please go ahead and pull the trigger on those and come see us here the next couple of months. So
absolutely. Hey, and once more for Defend the Guard tomorrow, Monday, we're phone banking. It's defendtheguard.us/phone bank to sign up. And you can email. Our best expert is Diego Rivera. And his email is Diego at bringourtroopshome.net instead of .us. It's .net for the email there. Diego at bringourtroopshome.net, and he can give you, hold your hand and walk you through, give you the training and every, bit of the expertise you need to make the phone calls. And let's do it. We got Arizona, Texas. And I think there's one more tomorrow too that I forget off the top of my head, but we got a full day of work ahead of us tomorrow, but we need y'all's help. But like we were talking about before, it does work. And this kind of phone banking, and with the support of the Libertarian movement and the Libertarian Party, this is what it takes to, help the guys from Defend the Guard get this stuff through. So let's do it.
Awesome.
Did I get that typed in right, Scott?
Oh, yes, sir. That looks right to me.
Okay, I'll send out an email blast to go out tomorrow morning or early afternoon at the latest. So takehumaction.com if you want to sign up for that email list. Scott, I appreciate it, and we'll see you on the tour. Brody, thanks for coming by. Thanks for being part of episode 100. Like I say, we've got a few episodes in the can coming up. Josie, the Redheaded Libertarian, Dan Sanchez from Federation for Economic Education.
Love Dan.
And Liam McCollum's got some interviews coming up too. And then here in a few weeks, we're going to have that live show with me, and we're working on the lineup. We've got a couple new faces, a couple old faces, and it's going to be fun. And we'll have Scott on that here maybe in a couple months or so too, so we can all, if Scott's on, we don't have to talk that night. So
there you go.
I appreciate it. Thanks, guys. We'll see y'all later. Thanks for tuning in. All right.
Peace.
Yeah. Bye-bye.